I will start with a quote from what has to be the opposite of a wise old man, meaning a 7th grade me. I liked history, I excelled in it, and when I was asked why, I answered, because it's just a long story. It has no morals to teach, everyone dies in the end, and no one learns anything. I still think I was sort of right, but it has to be different now. Now all knowledge is shared, and future historians have to see some resemblance of an actual learning curve during our information age. Right? Light of Other Days explores how humanity would react if we got access to all information to every event that ever happened. Quick spoiler-free recommendation. If you think you'd like to know what humanity would evolve into if we were granted this omniscience, it's interesting and enjoyable and often feels genius if you can ignore the lack of characters or a plot that's barely there. Its biggest downfall is also a reason that makes it easier to recommend. It's too short. Examples will appear as I proceed. I came across this book by accident. I think it was just on Stephen Baxter's bibliography on Wikipedia, which, by the way, launched only a year later than this book was published. I had never heard anyone mention it in any circumstance. This felt strange when I understood after a few pages that I was going to want this to never end. I assume a big part of this lack of recognition comes as a flashback brought by other co-work of the authors. Arthur C. Clarke and Stephen Baxter also wrote the Time Odyssey trilogy afterwards. Its badness shows through and reveals all the flaws and mishaps their work can contain. When you tune your logic to see similar flaws in Light of Other Days, many things you glanced over at the first time now start to seem somewhat lazy. So the authors we have here are Arthur C. Clarke, the grand old man of, let's say, all realistic science fiction ever. I don't think he needs any more introduction. In his last years, he combined his powers with Stephen Baxter. Unlike Clarke, who tended to keep his stories somewhat grounded in our reality, Baxter is known for thinking outside the box. By this, I mean he'll get out of the box, burns the box, runs around it smoking ashes, and feels to the sunset. To first person that greets him then, he will answer, "The box is fine, shut up." At least this is where he's at his finest. The Time Ships and Exultant are some of my favorite stories of all time, of those that go all in with their more far-fetched ideas. It's easy to realize just from here how this symbiosis could easily crash and burn after every paragraph. And that's exactly what the 3 books of the Time Odyssey achieve. It's a trilogy where every decision feels like the writers fought until a compromise was made. One that left boldly feeling only slightly disappointed. Like a puppy that has 2 personalities and tries to scout a land full of bear traps and manages to trip on every one and drag them along for the rest of its undoubtedly painful journey. And when what's left of the puppy reaches its finish line, the 3rd book starts. These novels are called A Time Odyssey 1, Celebrity Deathmatch BC, Time Odyssey 2, Roland Emmerich's Electric Boogaloo, and the 3rd one called Dark of the Moon 2, Attack of the Clones. Okay, I admit I don't remember anything about the 3rd one. But the trilogy did make one thing very clear. If your story includes the end of the world, it shouldn't be about the end of the world. This you can consider a certainty when you try to think good movies where world ends. It's always the setting, not the point. Sons of Men, 28 Days Later, 12 Monkeys, Doctor Strangelove, Shaun of the Dead is the best example. Romantic comedy with zombies. Or if you can wander through literature and, well, it's the same thing. Do I have to list anything, or is it enough that I remember that Kurt Vonnegut existed? Well, in Time Odyssey, sun is going to fry Earth. That should be avoided, and that's the story. Second one really felt like a script for a Roland Emmerich disaster movie. As Light of Other Days became before the Time Odyssey, it seems to be the last novel where Clarke was still, if not on his A game, then at least competent. After the trilogy, his last effort of creating a novel was The Last Theorem, which he sent to Frederick Paul halfway through, saying, "I'm too old to think, do something with this since you're only 85. So now you know we are at the tail end of a career that started in the 40s. So some compromises were made. The story starts at 2030s. Our antagonist is Hiram Patterson, a billionaire who resembles a lot of Nathan Hummixson from Baxter's other novel, Flawed. He uses his wealth to create a functioning wormhole. We follow Kate Manzoni. Let's call her our protagonist because everyone has to explain everything to her because she doubts every possible scientific breakthrough as unethical. She is also the finder of Wormwood, a ticking clock that's assembled to bring tension, meaning an asteroid that's going to kill everyone, in 500 years. So everyone says the Earth is going to be destroyed, because we don't have, at the time, a technology to prevent it. 500 years. Yeah. It does sound dumber and dumber the longer you think about it. I'm pretty sure this is the time, at this and the Time Odyssey, are where Jixin Liu read them and thought, what if this was made but not idiotic? Aliens are coming in 400 years. Oh well. We could just create an utopia of plenty and maybe create better defenses along the way since centuries have to pass. In other news, wormholes now transmit light. So anytime, anywhere, one can be watched. When this technology is given to the masses, what will be referred as mutually assured surveillance, privacy issues become as relevant as they are now. But then more science happens. We reach a point where wormholes can also open windows to any event in the past, like that time viewer Clarke used in Childhood's End. Not to the future, though. That can of worms was kept shut. Only light passes through, though, so the past can't be interacted with. But everything that has ever happened can be seen by everyone. As this technology becomes available to the public, laws can't really keep up with the tech. Besides, why would you bother? When this technology exists, somewhere in the future it would eventually be used by everyone. So why not just start now? You could be watched right now by historians from the future using this technology. That is, if you were ever to create something relevant that anyone would give a crap about, you lazy slob. I once heard some Japanese feudal lord was stabbed to death through his rectum during a visit to laboratory. Boy, would I like to be there seeing if that really happened. I used that example to make you disgusted but curious. Admit it, there is someone you would watch pooping, just to see if it comes out as glitter and rainbows like you pictured it before. Before this happens, Hiram's son Bobby is revealed to be not just his son, but a clone. A clone whose DNA was tinkered before birth, so Hiram's offspring would have none of his own defects. This effect is strengthened by a chip in his brain, and when it's turned off, he feels a plethora of new emotions hidden until this moment. The society is already in a state where emotions are controlled by specific drugs. Happy pills, emotional pills, horny pills, like that side plot that was left out of Blade Runner. So, as no multiple worlds interpretations come to present themselves, this could be a perfect opportunity to dive into the concept of free will, or its seemingly omnipresent inconceivability. But no, that goes nowhere after that. There is no time because the novel is too short. Lying vanishes from the earth. Many politicians decide not to run for another term, though this naturally raises people's tolerance toward all the crazy things that apparently everyone does. In this world, politicians soon become a collection of people with no skeleton-filled closets to be discovered, meaning only the most boring people. Many of our idols would be destroyed. It would of course be a different thing for those celebrities that are born after the worm camps. They can behave, but they don't have to be sincere. Maybe your idol is Mr. Rogers or Alice Cooper. Good news! They were great people, even when no one was watching. But many would have to go through some self-evaluation like fans of Bill Cosby or Mother Teresa today. Even the two latter mentioned are in a weird position in this discussion. Mother Teresa once said that she doesn't care if a rape victim dies at birth after being denied of abortion by her. I just want what's best for the church. Well, that's awful. What if she had said that when no one was taking notes? Still a saint. And if Cosby knew he was always watched, he'd still be a beloved father figure. I guess this is the easier way to go. Taking this tolerance far enough, I believe we, meaning people who have at times erased our browser history, will search for that one guy who hasn't. I mean, think about it. Somewhere there is a person whose porn site searches are mostly beautiful couple has sex. I want to meet him or her and turn that person into an attraction like Carl Pilkington. Death to shame becomes inevitable. I don't dwell in these perversions for just joking reasons. In the story, most young people soon start masturbating and performing all sorts of acts wherever, since someone might be watching anyway, so let's just get our kicks about someone watching, right? There was the quote, "We all knew that 95% of WordCam owners would use it for voyeuristic purposes." This might still disturb you, but you'd be softened when all crimes would vanish. If you were to commit a robbery or a murder, Tom Cruise and his friends wouldn't have time to stop you, but they would find you the next day, without anyone having to suffer endless nightmares in their own filth. Wars become different. If two sides that hate each other clash for a week, we would have found a dozen Linny Englands, that torturer of Abu Ghraib, and after that, none. All sorts of propaganda will become non-existent, and the destruction of bug colonies of Glendathu will never be sold to us. Would you like to know more?